5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hello and welcome everyone to Truth, Beer, and Consequences. This is a podcast where my co-host and I, sorry I was giving you a moment there, my co-host and I, we listen to all the Cincinnati-based craft beer podcasts, and we watch all the media around that content's created for about Cincinnati craft beer, and we get together at a podcast host, and today we are back at Higher Gravity Summit Park. Thank you for being a gracious podcast host. Now, we give our version of the truth of how those things went, and hopefully there aren't too many consequences from the hosts of the other craft beer podcasts and media. And so far, this far into 2024, it's been smooth sailing.
Yeah.
Not sure if we're doing it right then.
We probably aren't.
Okay.
Yeah, but also the consistency of some of the other podcasters, they might not remember that we're doing this, and
That's
so
true.
we kind of slide under the radar as far
could
as
be.
are people accurately representing what I've been saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of the inconsistency. Mm-hmm. But anyways, my name is Marco. I'm a taproom manager here locally. I also was a brewer here in the greater Cincinnati area for several years. That other voice you heard belongs to the best co-host in Podcastlandia.
I'm Julia. I love to drink all the craft beer that Cincinnati has to offer and then some. And I have two things to say.
Okay.
One, I absolutely love the surliness of a salmon.
Okay.
And two, today, as we're recording, it is my mom's birthday.
I was going to say happy birthday to your mom.
So I was going to say happy birthday, Mom.
We didn't talk about it before we turned the mics on, but I was going to say happy birthday to your mom.
we should call her.
Okay.
And say happy birthday to her. You want to do that? Because why not?
Sure.
Why not?
Hello.
Hello, Mom.
Yes.
You are currently on Truth, Beer, and Consequences. And Marco and I just wanted to say
Happy birthday.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice.
that we would give
that
you...
completed my day.
Aw, good. Well, I thought we'd give you a special shout out because, just timing, scheduling, and just me not realizing what day of the week it was, and wanted to make sure you knew how much you are loved and appreciated. So, happy birthday.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I'm looking forward to going out with you later this week. All right. Well,
All right,
you have an awesome
have
rest
a
of your
good
evening.
time.
Will do. Happy
All right.
birthday. I'll see you soon. Bye.
All right, bye. Thank you.
And there we go.
All right.
That was fun.
That was fine. So, now that we've said happy birthday to Julia's mom
And introduced ourselves.
and introduced ourselves, all the thoughts and opinions on this podcast are ours and ours alone. They do not reflect any entity which we may be affiliated with, such as full-time jobs, part-time jobs, or Higher Gravity itself, for that matter.
Or my mom.
Or your mom. Yeah. It just, yeah. She has opinions.
Yes.
But we are not speaking for her about those opinions.
Or maybe today we will.
I don't know, maybe. So if you want to get at us, we'll tell you how at the end of the pod. Also, thank you to all of you who have been listening for a long time. Truly appreciate it. Thank you for all of you who are joining us for the first time. I truly appreciate your giving us a chance. Hang in there, listen to a few, you'll get it. And hopefully you'll tell your friends and family and all that about it. And we can hopefully continue to grow. That being said, no craft beer podcast would be a good craft beer podcast if you weren't having some sort of beverage. Now, it doesn't always necessarily need to be craft beer, but in this case, we are.
Yes.
Julia, what you drinking?
I am drinking I believe it's a new to Cincinnati distributed beer from Indianapolis, Metazoa Brewery or Brewing Company. I didn't look that close at the can, called Hoppopotamus. It is an IPA. It is incredibly fruity, but it is also very clear.
Yeah.
And it's an easy drinker. I'm enjoying it.
Nice.
How about yourself, Marco?
I am having summer ale from Schlafly. Schlafly?
Summer lager.
Summer lager. Excuse me.
Schlafly.
Summer lager.
Schlafly. That's a hard name to say.
Yeah. Is it somebody's name? Is that why it's named Schlafly?
We'll go with that.
Okay.
I've never looked into the brewery that deeply. Or they just said, what's the hardest brewery name for someone to say when they're drunk off of our beer? That's what we want to call ourselves.
Right.
And they're like, Schlafly.
Well, at the time they opened, Hoppopotamus was available.
Ooh, yeah, that's true.
And they chose Schlafly.
Schlafly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Must be a family name
probably is.
from the clan Schlafly.
What else could it be?
Yeah. That's it.
All right. Well, last week we had 5 shows to talk about. So
Yeah.
we were trying to fly through them before going to Kolschneid, and we actually ended up still having a decent length
55 minutes?
episode. Yeah,
I
well,
think?
55 minutes for Patreon and about 45-ish for everyone else.
Gotcha.
This week we only have 3 shows. So let's see what kind of chaos we can
All right.
create from that to have this be, a decently length episode. So 3 shows. How about we make sure that we listen to the same 3 shows this week?
Okay.
All right. We have an episode. I say an episode, a YouTube video from the Gnarly Gnome. It's not part of any series. It's just a video content from him, which is always exciting to see on Cincinnati Distilling, Fountain Reserve Bourbon.
Yeah, it's about bourbon.
Yeah.
But we still watched.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
it's it's Cincinnati craft.
It is
technically,
Cincinnati craft.
Yeah, and we support all things Gnome all the time.
Yep.
We have an episode of the Miami Valley Craft Beer Podcast where Blake talked to Andy from Brink Brewing.
Yep.
And then we have a national podcast that we're going to talk about, Brewbound podcast, which I believe we've covered a small number of times in the past on the show.
Maybe 2 times,
Yeah.
possibly 3
Right.
over the years.
This episode, they did an interview talking about all the rumors surrounding is Boston beer being bought, merging, that type of thing. So it touches
So
a
they
big
did-
part of Cincinnati. So
Didn't they do an interview with the new CEO at Rheingeist?
Rheingeist, yep.
Did they also do? Was it them that did the podcast with Garage Beer?
Yes, because they actually mentioned that very briefly in the beginning of this episode of Brewbound.
Oh, if I don't remember. Yeah,
but,
that was in
but
my
that
notes.
But I think I want to say we touched on it, but because it was kind of no longer-ish, like the whole Garage Beer thing is still very much a Cincinnati-ish. So I want to say we talked about it, but I'd have to go
think
back
we
to my
did.
notes to do that, yeah. And yeah, I think you're right. I think there might have been one other one where they either talked to or talked about something else that was very Cincinnati-centric. So, but yeah, so we're going to talk about them again. And,
Yeah.
I mean, Boston beer, where there's smoke, is there fire?
Yeah.
It was an interesting conversation.
Okay.
So 3 pieces of content. Where would you like to start, Marco?
Let's start with the non-beer podcast.
All
or
right.
the non-beer, piece of content.
So the Gnarly Gnomes YouTube video on Cincinnati Distilling's Fountain Reserve Bourbon. It's about a 7.5 minute episode, which means we're going to talk about it for 15 because that's what we do. He said that he has found it's incredibly hard to just sit down and drink with people. Which sometimes, yeah. I mean, sometimes
happen.
every time you're sitting down to drink with someone, there's, I don't want to call it an ulterior motive, but there's some other reason or some other thing you're trying to get done at the same time that you're there. I mean, like you and I, we come up here, and that's why we try to make sure that we sit down and hang out for, gosh, sometimes an hour or more, just having a drink and just catching up,
Yeah.
so that we feel like we are here to hang out and have a drink.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I get it too from his standpoint as well, because a lot of times he gets out. It's for content purposes, so it's either a few minutes before or a time after, where they're just kind of talking about other things, or even the same thing, or elaborating on things that just didn't make it to air for whatever reason or another. It could be on purpose. It could be just totally, just that it didn't come up.
Think of the conversations you and I have before recording and after recording. Sometimes it just doesn't fit into whatever that content is.
So I'll also say, before we actually start talking about the piece of content, full disclosure,
that was in the content, so you know.
Right. Full disclosure, I work for Cincinnati Distilling. I work for March 1st Brands. So I don't talk about it because I don't want anybody to mix up that I'm not talking for the company in any way ever. And if I ever do, I'll let you know.
Talking about this video is not any type of endorsed or sponsored or anything other than we both watched the content.
Right.
And we're just going to talk
I
about the
feel
content.
like I just have to disclose.
Sure.
that
No. I think
my
that's fair.
paycheck is from that company.
I better safe than sorry. I see nothing wrong with it.
I have not had this bourbon.
No, interesting. So I've had a bourbon product that you have not had?
I have not had that bourbon.
Interesting. Okay. Did they still have it, right? It didn't sell out. I know they were doing pre-orders, but was it a limited amount?
I thought it was a limited amount.
Okay.
But it was a fairly large amount.
Okay.
But I believe if they didn't sell out, it was almost sold out. The gist of it is that the bourbon was cut with water from the fountain.
Correct. And that's kind of where the video starts, is Gnome giving a bit of the history of the Tyler Davidson fountain down at Fountain Square.
Right.
And why it is okay to drink directly from the fountain, why it is okay to proof down alcohol using water from the fountain. Yes, you don't want to take a swim in the fountain, but certain aspects of the fountain are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were, like, the city had to sign like a 3,700-page contract or agreement or whatever the proper terminology is to ensure that if you want to drink directly from the lady's hands, you can.
Yeah, get up there and...
I mean, you could take an iron supplement with your multivitamin, but why? Just go to the fountain. The fountain water was used, as we already said, was used to proof down the bourbon, which made it, I think he said it was a 90 proof or 99 proof.
I thought he's...
I didn't write it down,
but...
So, Marco, I'm going to ask you directly about the specs of this bourbon.
I'm sure I have a page of specs somewhere.
Probably. This is the first in a series of bourbons and whiskeys that are honoring local landmarks, such as fountains, squares, townships, bridges, parks. There is kind of, like, if you think about the city of Cincinnati and all of the historical little puzzle, I don't want to call them puzzle pieces, but all the little historical things everywhere, it's almost untapped potential. Like, it's almost unlimited, the different labels and the different, recipes and variations of their bourbons and whiskeys and even other spirits that they could make that all celebrate different aspects of Cincinnati. I mean, hell, I think next on the list is probably the Hill Incline Rum, right? Because rum was big in the West Side, right?
Hill Incline Rum.
Rum was the first thing that popped into my head. I'm like,
Hill Incline Rum.
Sure. Hill Incline whiskey would be fun.
Well, there is one coming out.
Ooh.
Okay. So I'm not breaking any news here. It's already been advertised by Cincinnati Distilling. Hyde Park Square Reserve Bourbon Whiskey. So
there's Hyde Park. Didn't they do one for something in Marymount? Maybe, or no?
No, they did Middletown.
Middletown. I think that's. I was like, there's an M somewhere. So there are 4.
They did a Middletown,
right?
And then they did a
Square, Hyde
a double
Park.
oaked, and then there's going to be a reserve, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that they had already mentioned a couple, or maybe I'm just calling out labels that Gnome
could be
showed us from the Weekly Pint.
That very well could be.
If you're not watching the Weekly Pint, he doesn't do labels all the time, maybe once a month or so, but sometimes you get a peek at things that aren't guaranteed to happen, but they're at least ideas that breweries go, if this, or, distilleries, breweries, that type of thing, that they go, you know what, if this works, we already have a label ready for it that's, up for approval. But again, does not mean that it's going to happen. So when that Hill Incline Rum comes out, you heard it here first.
All right.
Yes. The only other note that I had here, because after he talked about the history of the Tyler Davidson fountain, the reasons why you can and cannot do alcoholic beverages with water from the fountain, he talked about the color, the scent, and the taste of this particular spirit.
Yep.
Dove into it, and basically what it boils down to is this is a caramel corn bourbon. If you like sweet, if you like corn, if you like caramel, this is the bourbon for you.
Pretty much exactly what he said.
Exactly what he said, yeah. And it's been...
It's better than candy corn. which is god awful.
I like candy corn.
You do?
Yeah. I can't eat
You
a
know
lot
what?
of it.
I'm not going to hold it against you, Julia.
And I have to be in the right mood for it. Like,
Yeah.
I can't just eat it.
When are you in the mood for just vanilla?
Like around Halloween.
Okay.
It's not even the flavor. It's just like the
waxy corn.
the shape, the color. It just reminds me of Halloween, and I always enjoy Halloween. So it's like one of those. Is it actually good? If I really think about it,
It's so
I don't
waxy.
know.
It just comes out the same way that regular corn does.
Just provides a nice, easy glide. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I do have a sniff and sip count.
Okay, let's go.
For this video because I mean
We probably should move on.
we probably should because so we've as of now talked about this for longer than the actual video was.
Excellent. Congratulations to us.
We have made it a mission to unintentionally do such things. And we've done it again. We are amazing.
That's it.
Yes. There were 10 sniffs, like him getting the aromas, the olfactory experience of this bourbon.
The
Yes,
olfactory
yes.
experience.
And he took 3 sips,
Okay, so 13.
which is according
26
to-
ounces.
Yes, for our drinking game, not the number of ounces that Gnome consumed while enjoying this product.
Right.
Our drinking game, so 26 ounces, that is 1.625 pints
In 7 minutes?
in 7.5 minutes.
Oh, all right. That sounds like a challenge.
So please don't use bourbon when you do that. All right. Do we need to take a break before moving on to the next one? Just a stretch?
Sure.
Quick break, and this really will be probably a pretty quick break. And
Probably.
we'll be right back to talk
Back.
to our last 2 shows. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have made it.
Back.
And Marco brought us lunch.
Yeah.
Marco ran out and was like, we need lunch.
Yep.
We need it. So we have some.
We have lunch.
So thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And
Cheers.
cheers. Cheers. Fantastic.
Cheers. We have lunch. Julia is sniffing and now tasting.
Such a damn good beer. Really, really is.
Yep.
It's one of those beers that every single time I have it, it's kind of like Spotted Cow to me, even though this is way more accessible than Spotted Cow. There's nothing overly crazy about this beer. There's nothing where you're going, man, this is a white whale, this is insane, it has all this stuff. It is just such a solid beer consistently, time after time. Every single time you get a bottle of it,
Such a good beer.
you know it's going to be exactly what you had the previous time.
So you say Spotted Cow, you think New Glarus, which makes me think part of the most recent news, Athletic Brewing,
Oh, yeah.
and how big they've become. They've become now even bigger than New Glarus.
Yeah. Yeah.
In as far as rankings by volume, it's outrageous how big this non-alc brand.
Well, didn't they just take over Ballast Point?
They did.
And they're not going to be brewing Ballast Point.
Nope.
It's going to be, I'm assuming, all athletic.
Yeah, it's all
I
athletic.
say beers, but I mean not
all athletic, non-alc.
beverages. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess that kind of leads us into the show we're going to be
Oh, yeah,
talking
we
about
can do
next.
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
they did touch on that a bit in this episode. Let's go ahead and talk about the Brewbound podcast that came out on June 19th. All the angles of a potential Boston beer sale. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about this, or talking about other people that have been talking about this
Right.
for
Shout out, Bruce
a
guys.
long time. Yeah, very, very long time. This was an interview that they did with kind of a business analyst about it. So this is not about the beer. This is not about brewing or really anything that is in kind of either of our wheelhouses for the most part.
At all, really.
This was a business decision discussion on why would this be a thing. Which is why we're going to talk about it.
There's a little bit in the opening, and then there's about 6 minutes at the end that was basically just like a paid commercial for like
Brewbound
software.
conference or whatever. Oh, the
Software.
software. Yeah.
So I mean, stay for it, don't stay for it, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to do. But
Yeah, in the beginning of the episode, they touched on a couple other news pieces before they got to the interview about Boston beer. But they did touch a little bit on celebrities getting into the beer and booze market and the Kelsey brothers buying a big ownership stake in Garage Beer.
right.
And again, since Garage Beer was for quite a while, a Cincinnati brand. We're still going to touch on it from here and there until it completely removes itself from anything Cincinnati.
Right, until it actually takes the turn to, a pale version of what it used to be, and even more so than it is at its current state.
Right.
But from an all-around standpoint, not just from a beer, but also from the standpoint of ownership, ethos, everything, all of it.
Right. And then they also talked a little bit about Athletic buying a Ballast Point facility and how they're not planning on making any Ballast Point in this facility. It's all going to be Athletic. Or again, the assumption is it's all going to be Athletic. I'm assuming Athletic doesn't contract brew anything. I think it's all just the
I don't think they contract brew anything anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I knew that for a bit.
I don't think they contract brewed ever. I think they started off at their original facility making their own stuff, and then they
and it just got big enough to where they needed bigger and bigger facilities and multiple facilities.
Right.
Yeah.
And this facility, this Ballast Point facility, is across the street from a facility they already have. Is that what they said?
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of, I'll be honest, I was kind of like half listening to sort of the beginning parts because I was like, okay, get to the Boston beer talk.
This gives them brewing capacity to, what is it, 750 million?
Yeah, they went from 500,000, was 100,000, not 750 million.
I'm like,
dude,
50 million.
That's a shit ton of NAB.
Well, I have things going on here. I'm looking around at 3 different things.
Yeah, there are a lot of T's
catching my attention here.
Where it's better than what we
750,000 barrels.
Yes, which their goal, they said, was to try to hit 1 million barrels. And it's like, Jesus.
That's tenfold what they're almost at.
Yeah. That's
kind of crazy.
Lot. That's insane. And I mean, so far, me personally, I have never had an Athletic beer that I liked. I think their milk stout, was it a milk stout or something? There was one that I'm like, this is okay, but there are other, to me, much better non-alcoholic options out there if that's what you're looking for.
I think a part of their huge growth, and I think this is a big part of their huge growth, is I think so many establishments are bringing in Athletic because it's easy. And then for people who want the Athletic product, they understand that, yes, there are more options now than ever in non-alc, but
that's a very recognizable name.
It is, and the other thing is that they're with distributors that can source and deliver the product, and you can get it shipped to your house. I don't think that's the majority of their growth. The majority of their growth is all of these other establishments, the restaurants, the bars, the craft breweries that are bringing their product in as an, oh yeah, we have that offering too. And so when you have, let's just take for an example, you have a local craft brewery. They need a non-alc option. They're not going to make their own because of all of just a laundry list of reasons why they're not going to. You bring in 1 case of 5, and then 2 weeks later you got to order another 5 cases.
Right.
And then 2 weeks later you got to order another 5 cases. And then you start to think about how much non-alc you're going through. Yeah, it's still a small percentage of your business. But what you start to realize is, much like somebody wanting to offer, like a craft brewery wanting to make sure they have a white wine or a red wine, what you start to see is that, and I even think it's a closer association than as far as the non-alc to the beer, what you start to see is that this is another option that helps to keep people at your space longer. It also continues to make your space an option for them. I think that's the majority of their growth. I don't think it's in the grocery stores and stuff like that, which they are getting into, and they are selling some of this product at the grocery stores. I think it's at all of these other establishments that are actually bringing the product in. That's where their growth is.
Yeah, and I think that, and this is kind of one kind of thought and one sort of question, not question directly for you unless you happen to know, just not something that I've noticed yet. I think that they're also one of the cheaper NA options. Like, you look at stuff like Untitled Art, Weihenstephaner NA, other than like the big macro, the Heineken Zero, the Bud Zero, all that. I think that as far as something that is still in that kind of craft NA space, they are one of the easier price points.
It is in line with what a consumer expects to pay for a craft pour.
Does Athletic do anything on draft,
Nothing.
like in kegs? I didn't think so. I think that it's
Everything
pretty much all
100%
canned.
is packaged.
Okay.
From what I understand.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that I've ever seen Athletic on draft or even advertised or even anything at all where it's in something other than a can. But I'm not looking for it, so I didn't know if that was even a thing anywhere or not.
No.
So, okay, all right. Well, other than those two things, Boston beer.
Boston beer.
The Boston beer talk starts about 17 minutes in. So the things that Marco and I just talked about with garage beer and Athletic doesn't interest you in the slightest, just skip to about 17 minutes in.
Talk about Pride, I think, a little bit.
They
talk a little bit about what they're doing for the weekend.
Yeah, they talked about
that opening
Celtics
bouncer.
and all that. And the Celtics
Never heard of
allegedly,
them.
potentially, maybe kind of fudging a game to make a bigger deal out of the final. I don't know. Sports ball.
Yeah.
Woo! So apparently a cannabis firm, Green Thumb, reached out to Boston Beer about a potential merger. And this has been a conversation, like you had said in the very beginning, Marco, that Bruce guys originally brought up. These have been, I say conversations. This has been a point of conversation amongst beer people, the big beer sphere, for quite a while, for several months. And what I'm taking from that is the whole, not necessarily where there's smoke, there's fire, but I certainly think these conversations are happening. Now, do I think that Jim Cook and Boston Beer are actively looking into trying to either expand, merge, sell out, whatever? I don't think so, but it doesn't mean that they can't still have the conversations. Something like our friend Chris has said, always do the interview.
Yep.
It's not going to hurt anything. You might learn something. Have the conversation. Nothing's going to, nothing bad can necessarily come out of that. This is something about that they talked about. Could the increase of the beyond beer movement, so THC beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, canned cocktails, ready to drink, be potentially impacting these conversations? I mean, look at Boston Beer and Twisted Tea compared to Boston Beer and beer. Which one is taking, center stage on what their portfolio is, and could that be leading into why they might be more open to conversations with maybe not even a cannabis company, but just an in general, does it make sense for us to stay where we are and who we are as a company?
I'd be interested to see what Jason has to say, because he has Sam Adams Boston Lager here available in bottles to purchase.
And Dogfish Head?
No. I don't.
Yeah.
He has Slightly Mighty.
Slightly Mighty. Which, Dogfish Head.
That's,
yeah.
yeah. But he doesn't. He doesn't have 60 minute.
No.
He doesn't have 60 minute. He doesn't have 90 minute. He doesn't have all the rest of that.
More the facetious. Well, technically, he has a little bit of Dogfish
Yeah,
Head.
he's got. Actually, that Slightly Mighty just came in.
Yes, it was on the community board. It's still up on the community board, and it came in on May 31st, according to.
It's in there.
According to the red pen, yeah, it's in. I
in
actually,
the cooler.
I actually almost grabbed it instead of the Metazoa, to be honest with you.
But and then there's Geist Tea here.
Yes.
But there's not Twisted Tea.
No. Yeah.
But so, what's the reasoning there? If Twisted Tea is a product that sells very well, he's in the business of selling product. Why is Twisted Tea not here and Boston Beer is here? That they're the same company.
Right. I guess the only
also
thing.
that he doesn't have any Angry Orchard,
True.
which
Also
cider is
doesn't
an
have
offering.
any double sing colors in 19.2 ounce cans.
That's right.
Just kind of throwing that out there. I think there is a bit of a kind of the knowing your market, knowing your clientele, and what you want to sell. I mean, you can go 2 minutes down the road to the Shell station, the BP, the 3 gas stations that are just right down the road, and get all the Twisted Tea you want. So
Yeah, but you can't drink it in the park.
I mean, you can, you just can't get caught.
Well, yeah.
But I feel like if people kept coming in and saying, "Oh, you don't have Twisted Tea, you don't have this, you don't have this," they may potentially add that, or it could just be that's just not the type of beverage. Even though yes, it sells a ton, they want to stay in a certain lane, and that's just not something that they have felt they need to expand that lane into. Like you said, I mean, we're trying to talk for, Jason, Nick, on that. That's just my opinion on how I think they might be viewing that.
That's fine.
Just because something sells incredibly well, I mean, there are several.
They may not sell here.
There are several major craft beer brands that sell incredibly well at other places that they do not carry for specific reasons.
Sure.
I mean, as long as the business is doing well and they don't feel like, okay, we have to find something to increase sales, why sell something that you're not excited about selling? Regardless of how much money it'll put into it.
So, listeners, this is how we get an hour content out of three shows.
Yes.
Okay? So you're paying attention.
Yes.
As soon as I started it.
It's not even a rabbit hole. It's like, okay, they talked about this in the show, and then boom, we have our thoughts, we have our opinions, and we just go.
Yeah.
And it's great. I think it's fantastic. Okay, let's try to bring this back in a bit to the Boston beer conversation. Not that wasn't,
right,
but we did kind of twist off a little bit.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. Let's see. Innovation is big at Boston Beer, or at least it kind of was. They're still trying some new things, but none of it seems to be beer related. So would innovations from Boston Beer on their current beer lineup, outside of the one-off things they do in their tap rooms, would those sell, or are people truly moving away from beer products? And could that mean it's why Boston Beer is looking at a potential partnership, acquisition, merger, whatever in the world you want to say that they're thinking of, to kind of keep going, to keep their name in some form, but to not have some of the responsibilities of those non-beer products? I don't know. It was a very interesting conversation. It was very high-level business talk.
Oh yeah, it was.
It was not
Lord.
It was not beer talk. It was not brewery talk. It was not craft beer community talk. It was the business, and the shareholders, and the stock prices, and who has the most voting rights still in the company. So it's a little out of my realm of familiarity, and I don't want to say expertise in any way, shape, or form, but it's not something to where some of the terms and some of the things that they were really concerned about or really excited about didn't quite hit me the same way that it would hit someone that really loves digging into the business side of a brewery, a bottle shop, of anything really.
Yeah, it was a little deep in there. It was more like stock talk, like you said. It wasn't like the level of stuff that we talk about.
I thought it was an interesting conversation because it was looking at things from a completely different angle than what you and I normally get from the content
I can
we listen to and watch.
The information from a professional in that space,
yes.
But it is just...
It was a very interesting listen, but if you don't really care about the potential business side of interactions and all that, it might not be your thing.
Yeah.
But again...
Look, here's the gist of it, folks. Jim Cook still owns the majority of the shares for voting. If he doesn't want to sell, he's not going to.
No.
Does he have a succession plan? It's the perfect succession plan.
Sure.
I'll let you listen and find out what it is.
But, I mean, they also already have a stake in a cannabis company in Canada.
Canada? Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. So is a potential merger even necessary? Because are they already pulling in other legs or other, new sides to the business where they're going to have that huge portfolio and they don't need to work with anyone else. I don't know. Listen, there were no answers in this. It was a lot of speculation and a lot of, they could do this because of this. They could do that because this makes sense. Well, did you need a break before we talk about our last show of the night? We are already at 50 minutes.
No, let's go.
We're doing good. All right. Last show that we have to talk about is the Miami Valley Craft Beer Podcast, Season 1, Episode 16, Brink Brewing.
Hey, Brink.
Blake made it to 3 different breweries the day that he recorded this. I think this was his first one of the day.
I think it was.
So I am very interested to see how he, if he sounds just absolutely exhausted by whatever that Third Breweries podcast is when that came out. But man, good on him for saying, I want to get these interviews done. I'm coming all the way down from Troy, so let's see what I can do in a single day to get as much content as possible. So good on you for that. I know that there have been some sound, I don't want to say issues, but just some sound things, some of the past episodes that made them a little harder to listen to. This one was fine. So I don't know if it was just a quieter environment or if he, is using new software and kind of tweaking some settings, but glad to see that all that is sounding the way that I know he wants it to sound like.
Yeah.
This was an interview with Andy McLeese from Brink, and I do have to say, Andy did not sound as grumpy as he normally does. Not entirely sure what he was sipping on.
Maybe it was because it was earlier in the day.
Could be before the day got, started to crush his hopes and dreams and aspirations.
Right. It was all fresh and new at that point.
Yes.
There was still hope.
There was still hope that the day could end up well.
That the day could end up well.
They started with the typical, how did you get into craft beer? And I took a little bit of offense to this. Andy blamed the West Side for introducing him to craft beer. Come on, Andy,
That's
what's up with that? Yeah. The West Side is nothing but positive when it comes to introducing people to craft beer.
Yeah.
Yeah. They compared hop prices to gas prices, which I thought was a very cool comparison that I don't think I've ever heard anyone make before. But it does make sense that you never really know
it does happen.
When or why some of the prices.
It's sort of like a stock exchange experience where, the Citra and Amarillo are selling for $24 a pound on the spot market, but you can get Centennial for 12 or whatever. I'm just making shit up here as far as prices are concerned. But yeah, on the spot market, that's how you would purchase that if you're not going into a big
contract,
big hop contract.
Which Andy did say that they looked into, and then they went, "This just isn't.
It's
risky.
It's a trap."
So for that, if you don't use, say you go into a contract to get, and again, made up numbers. Okay, we're gonna commit to buying 100 pounds of Galaxy hop while it's at, $10 a pound or whatever, and you don't end up using all of that. Can you sell that back to them, or do you have to say, well, either you have to sell it to someone else or it just rots and you're just out that?
It's yours, and you pay for storage every month that you aren't using it.
But if
you use it.
But if you decide, you know what, we're not going to use this anymore, is that something that you could resell to someone else, or does it go back to them?
You would buy it, and then you'd sell it to them B2B.
Gotcha. Okay. Boy, we're doing more business talk, and I thought that we were done with that after Brewbound.
Yeah.
All right, cool. They talked about New England IPAs and why they are a mainstay at Brink, because that's certainly something that every time you go to Brink, you can almost always guarantee there's going to be a New England IPA or three and a stout or two on the board.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes. They expanded their space, and they talked about what they're going to be using it for. Big old bingo hall.
Bingo.
Because Andy is tired of trivia, and he's like, I want something to where there's still some interaction, but I'm not quite using as many words.
Have you ever called bingo before?
I have not. All you got to do is say a letter and a number 15 times. We got B6, anyone? B6. All right, moving on. Now we have... Yes. And also a bingo number, I think. I guess. I don't know if there are certain numbers that associate with certain letters. I don't pay that much attention. But yes. So the next time you go to Brink, check out the expanded back patio area that they're hoping to have some heaters for the winter so it can kind of be used as a year-round space. Don't touch the smokers, because even though they look like they're Brinks, Brink only occasionally uses them without permission to make some hot dogs and stuff for the tap room. But if you try to get involved, then, they might not be able to make hot dogs for you, so be careful about that. Father G's bees. Andy doesn't know who Father G is or why there are bees.
He's an OG.
He is an OG.
Yeah.
But why the bees? And all he knows is it's one of their best sellers.
Because bees important.
It does bees. This bees very important to the Brinks. They got to watch someone on ESPN 15 in a Brink shirt during the U.S. Steinholding competition.
That's cool.
Which is pretty fantastic, getting the Brink name out there for the 5 people watching at 4:15 in the morning for the 20-minute Steinholding competition. In all honesty, that is really cool. I always like when a brewery will repost a picture of someone wearing their merch that's somewhere across the world or far across the United States and all that, and just like our name, even hopefully it makes one person say, "Oh, where's that brewery?" and tell me about it.
MPH is pretty good about that.
Yeah, they are. 13 Below also does that a lot with people that wear their merch on vacations. Let's see, what else did they talk about in this episode?
They finally started using Brinks.
They did. It's about damn time.
Yeah, they've been open for this long.
And yes.
They just started using Brinks.
Yeah, which if you don't know what we're talking about, you need to listen to this episode. It was enlightening in more ways than one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have in here? The maturing market and the inevitable comings and goings of breweries, which was a really interesting conversation. It wasn't anything overly new to hear someone who works in the brewery space talking about, but it's exactly what it sounds like. In the brewing world, there are going to be highs and lows, and you always have to be thinking, okay, what do I need to do if tomorrow, for whatever reason, things come crashing down? Do we have a plan to pivot? Do we have a plan to do this? Or when you see another local or semi-regional brewery closing, opening, it's kind of the cycle of brewery life. And as long as you stay comfortable and confident with what you're doing, you just have to kind of say, hey, I'm doing absolutely everything that we can do to make our space the best space that it can be. And hopefully fortune smiles upon us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Brink is finally starting to use science at the brewery after 7 years.
Well, I mean, that's okay.
Not my words.
Good. Glad they could. I mean, you grow into...
Brewing is a STEM profession.
It is.
Yes.
It is. And to the degree at which you use that is up to each individual brewery. And if they're growing into more of that, then good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 other notes that I had on this episode. Musi is probably the beer that they've had the most variants of, which I would buy. I believe they do several variants every year for Black Friday. They have like Little Zoomy, which is absolutely, a coffee version. It is absolutely a Musi variant.
Yeah. Won an award for that one, too.
Absolutely, they did. They have a lot of medals, and they did talk about, a lot of the awards that they got. Hold the Reins being one that is always going to be on the board and is always very near and dear to Andy's heart and the whole Brink crew's hearts.
Yeah.
And basically why you should go to College Hill, not just for Brink, but the food, the entertainment, what's available in that space. It is, I don't want to call it an up-and-coming neighborhood because it's already there, but it just keeps getting better and keeps growing and really coming into itself as a place that you don't just go to College Hill to stop into one place and then you leave. It's a Dora area now, so you can go there, get your beer from Brink, and then check out some of the shops, check out some of the other restaurants, and make an afternoon, if not a whole day, out of hanging out up in the College Hill area.
Yeah, it's undergone a lot of change, a lot of progress in a positive way. My youngest kid would take some lessons sort of in that area, and so as we would take them, back and forth, we're able to see a lot of the changes and the growth. And then finally, the last time I went to Brink, I was like, my gosh, look at all the stuff happening over here. So
it's very, very
it was
cool.
very cool.
Very cool. Great episode. Blake, you're doing a fantastic job. And I'm assuming, unless he has other interviews with other breweries, we'll be getting 2 more Cincinnati-based brewery episodes in the very near future.
I would imagine.
I don't want to project his release schedule. And again, he may want to intersperse some non-Cincinnati breweries that he talks to in between.
Some little sprinkling.
But can't wait to see what else he has coming up. He's doing a great job.
Keep it up.
Keep it up, Blake. That's all my notes on that episode, and that's the last thing that we have to talk about.
Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Did you have any other closing notes before we shut down this episode that ended up being longer than what we thought, which is
Oh, I
pretty
forgot. We
typical.
didn't mention Terry Bollea.
Oh, we did. Did you want to throw something out there?
Yeah, so you got Hulk Hogan with a beer,
Yeah.
a light fizzy yellow beer.
Yeah. What was the thing that they said? That isn't he's like not drinking? They're like, no, it's just in moderation, but moderation is just
According to the article I
chugging
read,
and crushing beers.
according to the article I read, he's sober now. Now, according to Brewbound, they're saying
Yes,
that they
he's
were
still-
told that he's just indulging in moderation.
Correct. Yes.
So, to me,
mean,
that
again-
means he's still drinking,
Yeah.
which is fine.
I mean, again,
That's a personal
whatever.
choice. If he wants to drink,
yeah,
drink.
absolutely.
If you
absolutely.
don't want to, don't. If you want to, you want to have this balance, go ahead and have.
Sure,
Do
sure.
do you, man?
just know your limits, know what is good for you mentally and physically, and make sure that whatever decisions you're making aren't negatively impacting the people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Other than that, do what you want.
Yeah.
If you like what we did tonight, follow us everywhere, send us emails telling us stuff, or more importantly, become a Patreon subscriber and get unedited episodes of everything that we do. The only thing that I cut out are the silences from where we go to get other beers, or if I have to blow my nose, or if Marco decides that he sees someone across the bar that he hasn't talked to in a week and he has to go over and have a 45-minute conversation with them.
Happens.
I mean, you guys don't want to sit through 45 minutes of dead air, so I cut those out. But when you're a Patreon subscriber, you not only help us pay for things like podcast and webcast hosting, which podcast hosting renewal is coming up. So A, thank you to all of our current Patreon subscribers for helping to pay
Yay.
that bill. And B, that means that we are at almost 3 years of absolutely uninterrupted podcast consistency. Holy shit.
Holy shit.
If you want to know how to do any of those things and support us, go to truthbeerpod.com. Links to everything are out there, and occasionally, check out our show notes for our episodes because I put in some fun stuff sometimes.
Puts in stuff.
No one has claimed the free pitcher of beer. No one has claimed the shout out. And no one has claimed the full pour, like not a splitting a pour, but me paying for a full pour of you having Clase Azul here at Higher
nice.
Gravity Summit Park. No one claimed it.
All right.
So
Read the show notes,
If you
people.
see something in the show notes that say, hey, tag us on social media. If you see this with the answer, the phrase, the whatever it is, I put in there what it gets you. So if you're like, I don't care about this, well, then don't shout it out. But if you do, it's not every single week, but it almost always is.
Yep.
There's almost always something fun in there. All right, with that being said, thank you again for listening, for subscribing, for hanging out with us and having a hell of a lot of fun. Marco, thank you for bringing us lunch.
Sure.
It was fantastic. And what are you going to be doing next week?
We're going to be doing this next week. Maybe not here.
And maybe not on Tuesday.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to mysterious open-ended endings.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.